American politics are in a moment of major upheaval, with a president and a Republican-controlled Congress reshaping the federal government and expanding the limits of presidential power.
America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate. We have taken back control of the Senate. Wow, that's good.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy. Chainsaw!
Oh, I love it. We've had so much of an overreach of our Constitution with spending money. Certainly, we need help in oversight and reducing that spending and ending funding.
The election that gave Republicans total power was also a painful rejection for Democrats, leaving party officials from D.C. to Denver questioning how to win back voters who feel their party has failed to deliver.
It is real and it is deep, and unless we meet that frustration and break through, we're going to continue to have a hard time with election cycles.
So I hope that you see this movement is not about partisan labels or purity tests, but about class solidarity.
While Republicans are having a moment on the national stage, the Colorado GOP is trying to catch up. The state party has a new leader after 2 years of infighting.
We have so much division. We have so much distraction. We have all these things going on, debating about the past.
With major statewide elections looming next year, Colorado Republicans need to find their way back from the political irrelevance they've putzed around in for almost a decade.
One idea is, as I'm always saying, getting more votes than the other side.
The midterms may feel far away, but the stage is being set now for lasting changes in Colorado and the country. This is Purplish from CPR News and the Colorado Capital News Alliance, a show about Colorado politics, policy, and the 2025 state legislature. I'm Benta Birkeland. We're talking today about how each of the major parties in Colorado is looking to the future. We'll get to the Democrats later in the show with my colleague Caitlin Kim. She's been hearing a lot about what they think their party needs to do. But first, Jesse Paul from the Colorado Sun is here to talk about some big changes for the Colorado GOP.
What's up, Benta? Yeah, I can't believe you said the dreaded word midterms. Can we just finish the legislative session first?
I know, right? I mean, we just had an election. The next one's already barreling toward us. We have candidates starting to declare for the statewide offices, and both political parties are preparing to.
Yeah, all of the statewide offices in Colorado are up for grabs next year. Governor, Attorney General, Treasurer, Secretary of State. There's also a U.S. Senate seat that's up for election. A lot of state legislative seats are up for grabs, too. It's a chance for Colorado Republicans to try to claw back some power, and it's also a chance for Democrats to possibly advance a new generation of leaders.
The story of the GOP's future really starts with the party's last chair, and that's Dave Williams. He was divisive and definitely headline-grabbing.
Williams did a lot of things that divided the party. He attacked Pride Month. He attacked sitting Republicans if he didn't think they were properly towing the party line.
You want to know why evil advances in this country and in our politics? Is because we have feckless leaders in Washington and Denver and in local community that don't want to say anything about it. It's come high time that we fight back against these people and start doing what the Lord would have us do.
He used party resources to help his own congressional bid. He kicked a Sun reporter out of a party event, and that got national headlines.
Yes, my colleague Sandra Fish, that wasn't me, by the way. But really, the biggest thing that ruffled feathers was probably how Williams got the party involved in GOP primaries. As you mentioned, he backed his own competitive congressional bid, and just the fact that he was running for Congress while being chair alone made a lot of people pretty mad.
That's a big deal to weigh in on primaries. Before Williams' tenure, the GOP was always neutral in Republican primaries.
Yeah, parties basically normally stay on the sidelines of these primaries because they don't want to be seen as putting their thumb on the scale of one candidate or the other. But part of Williams' philosophy was that Republicans should be as active in policing their members as attacking their opponents.
And certainly Williams was active in attacking his own party. There was just so much back and forth. I know there were months it just felt like we were writing so many Dave Williams stories.
So many.
All of this culminated in an unsuccessful ouster attempt. Prior to his term being up, and that was last summer, Williams' opponents gathered, and his supporters called it a coup. The opponents met, held a vote, declared victory, named a new chair. But then a judge blocked it, and Williams served out his term.
So that all brings us to today. Williams decided not to seek another term as chairman. He didn't really explain himself, but I don't know if he exactly had to. It was probably going to be a pretty big uphill battle to victory given all the controversies that surrounded him. A lot of folks were really angry at the way that he led the party. All of the congressional delegation basically called on him to get out of office. Lauren Boebert, the most senior congressperson from Colorado, very publicly clashed with him. And I just have to play something here. It's a little bit of the audio from a recent Central Committee meeting that was held over Zoom where Dave Williams was trying to change the party bylaws to advance his personal agenda for the party. Williams' Republican Party detractors were kind of losing their minds during this thing, and it was pretty emblematic of how the past 2 years have gone. It was like trying to FaceTime your grandma or something.
I'm trying to get the ballot ended and then rewritten so that you all understand it.
Mr. Chairman, we had multiple.
If you wish to be recognized,
Mr. Chairman, I've asked for a
if you
point
wish to be recognized,
I keep getting muted.
Please stop. Please stop.
Staff keep.
I was kind of honestly shocked listening to that meeting in real time, but it was pretty emblematic of how the past few years have gone. Just a lot of disagreement, folks talking over each other, no one on the same page. It was not good.
This is absolutely.
Ron.
I keep getting muted.
Ron, stop.
He is.
Stop. Everybody stop.
This is absolutely ridiculous.
Okay. I mean, certainly all this dysfunction really left the field pretty open for Republicans when it comes to picking another leader. There was a big field and a lot of variety, but no obvious frontrunner.
Yeah, that's actually kind of how Dave Williams became chairman in the first place. It was after the 2022 election where Republicans were kind of starting that putzing around in the wilderness, and there were just a bunch of folks, and Dave Williams rose to the top. This time around, there were 7 candidates, the most well-known of whom were a couple of colorful former state lawmakers, Lori Sain and Richard Holtorf. They both had the shared experience of some gun snafus.
True.
And then there was former Routt County Treasurer Britta Horn.
Republicans didn't let the media attend this gathering in person, so we just had to watch all of it unfold over a YouTube link. I did talk to some Republican lawmakers ahead of the meeting about it, and they all said they really wanted the party to just singularly focus on winning and set aside the finger pointing and the "you're a rhino and you're not conservative enough." Here's Republican State Senator Byron Pelton from Sterling.
We shouldn't be worried about certain, litmus tests or scorecards or, that sort of thing. We should just be worried about representing our people and doing it well.
Yeah, Benta, you and I know pretty well. I've seen you at these things, and they can get pretty cray-cray, but this one ended up being relatively docile. It took all day, yes. There were some attacks lobbed at Williams, and
some Zoom issues of people not getting credentialed or something, but
yeah,
it didn't go off the rails.
Yeah, it wasn't quite as bad as the grandma FaceTime Central Committee meeting a few weeks earlier. And it actually only took 2 rounds of voting before Britta Horn got to a majority. She beat Sain with a relatively small margin. The ideas that Britta Horn presented during this election were pretty familiar.
We have to stop the infighting and start fighting for the party.
Uniting the party is something that Dave Williams promised to do, but it just really didn't happen. But now Britta Horn is coming back and saying that she wants to actively recruit strong candidates.
We can't just wait for people to walk in the door. We have to make sure that we have a farm team. We make sure that we support them and make sure we have all the data and all the technology and all the resources to win those races. And then we also need to make sure we have a leader that won't trip over themselves. We don't need any more distractions. We don't need any more division.
Let's tell people a little bit more about Britta Horn. She's been involved with politics for a long time, and she's from the Western Slope.
Yeah, she lives kind of near Steamboat Springs. She was the Routt County Treasurer about a decade ago. She ran to be the state treasurer in 2018, lost in kind of a large primary field. Remember, 2018 was back in the days where Republicans could win statewide office in Colorado. After that, she kind of helped Trump locally. She worked in New Mexico for him, and she's just been kind of a party activist. People know her around. She's not like a household name in Colorado, but if you're a Republican, you probably interacted with her before. But I think the really big thing that you probably need to know about Britta Horn is I don't think she has a ton of experience in a position like this. Anybody who's running to be the Colorado GOP chair has to know that it's going to be a pretty contentious job, but this might be unlike anything she's ever done before.
Right. It's not the most powerful position. You know, there's so much outside spending these days. It doesn't all go through the state party anymore, but it's certainly a bully pulpit, and it's someone that I know we quote, and it helps with messaging, and certainly a lot of coordination as well. I think one big question is how much the next chair can improve things on the ground realistically for Republicans. They're not going to single-handedly turn our state red. A lot of people just don't want them to cause harm to Republican candidates.
Yeah, being a state party chair is like the most thankless job of all time. It's like the cat herder's cat herder. And the first rule of being a party chair is really just to do no harm. And we'll see if she actually clears that.
We've talked about so much infighting internally among Republicans for years. It ramped up significantly under Dave Williams. When she talks about bringing people together and uniting people, I mean, you've got various people who truly despise each other, and the factionalism and divisions, you know, those will still persist. But, and I'm sure you heard this from the people you spoke with as well, people really just don't want leadership putting their thumb on things one way or another.
Yeah, and I think these expectations that we're setting up are kind of important. Even in the moments after Britta Horn became chair of the party, there were folks already saying that she was too divisive, not doing things. There was like a pizza eating controversy on Saturday, apparently, about Britta Horn ordering pizza and who got to eat it, if it was her supporters or not. Dave Williams.
Oh, really? I had not heard that.
Oh, yeah, pizza, different kind of Pizzagate. And then, and then, you know, Dave Williams went on a conservative talk show and basically said he doesn't expect Britta Horn to do much, and he thinks that she's just going to continue the divisiveness that's been in the party. So, you know, is she going to be able to unite everybody? Almost certainly not. I don't think anybody would do that. I mean, even Donald Trump, if he was the chair of the Colorado Republican Party, would probably have some issues. But she already has promised to stop endorsing folks in primaries, and I think that's going to go a pretty long way as to uniting folks.
One thing I want to touch on, and this is an issue that came up a lot when we talked to people running for party chair as well as grassroots Republicans, is this effort by Republicans to close their party primaries, to only have Republicans participate and not have unaffiliated voters participate.
Yeah, Republicans really see this as a way to take back control of their party. They've complained for a long time that unaffiliated voters participating in Republican primaries basically water down their candidates and also let Democrats meddle in who their general election candidates are. And so Dave Williams really championed this effort to opt out of the state's partisan primaries, keep the general election candidate selection process in-house. That's kind of a tongue twister, but that's what it is. And, you know, there's this lawsuit that's pending in federal court right now that was launched by Dave Williams. I think that Britta Horn's going to continue it. Who knows whether the money's actually going to be there or if it's going to be successful. But I think this is something that Republicans generally want to see the end of. Not sure where it's going to go. Not sure if it's the best political move for Republicans, but here we are.
That's what I wonder, too, when you have unaffiliated voters in the state outnumber both Republicans and Democrats. And if unaffiliated voters can't choose to participate in the Republican primary, would that give Republicans a disadvantage in the general election? I know it's not most Republican voters, but I've talked to Republicans who feel like the party should keep the primary process the way it is currently, that if an unaffiliated voter picks that Republican candidate in a primary, they're much more likely to stick with them in the fall.
I think those are all really good points, Benta, but in the years of covering politics, the thing that I've kind of learned is this is all kind of a guessing game. You kind of throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And so I'm not sure if this lawsuit ends up being successful, what that's going to mean for Republicans, if it's not successful, if things are really going to change. There's just so many dynamics at play.
Fundamentally, Republicans want their leadership to help them start really winning in Colorado again. It was a while ago, but still not that long ago when we had split legislative chambers. And Republicans really want to change the tide in Colorado and stop the state from getting more and more blue. I think there's real limitations on the influence of a state party at this moment when politics are so nationalized.
I mean, Donald Trump is such an important figure in both Democratic and Republican political circles these days. And Britta Horton made it pretty clear that she's a Trump diehard and sees her role leading the party as kind of through that Trump lens.
And as you pointed out, Jesse, Trump's dominance in politics is true for Democrats as much as it is for Republicans. And that's what we're going to talk about next. This is Purplish from CPR News and the Colorado Capital News Alliance. Turning from one side of the aisle now to the other, there's plenty of hand-wringing and soul-searching going on among Democrats too. But unlike Republicans, it's not about how they're doing in the state. In Colorado, Democrats control the state legislature by wide margins. They also aren't sweating statewide races. But of course, nationally, it's a different story. And that's why we're bringing in CPR's Caitlin Kim from D.C. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, Benta.
I think it's fair to say that the thing we're hearing from Democratic voters is frustration. This sense that their leaders aren't doing enough to meet this national political moment.
That's right. You know, you listen to any Democratic town hall and you hear voters say, we want you guys to do more, when it comes to challenging the federal layoffs, cuts to funding and services, attacks on the rule of law. This was a speaker at one of Senator Michael Bennett's recent town halls.
We need someone who will fight, and are you guys looking for that? Because everyone out here, everyone I know, moderates, hardcore left people, they want someone who will fight. And we need that now, and we want to know what you're doing to bring that fight.
What do you think Democrats can do here? How do they respond to that question?
I mean, this is the problem. There's not much that they can do, at least in Congress, to be perfectly honest. Elections have consequences, and they are not in power in D.C. But to quote Democratic Representative Brittany Pedersen, Democrats may not be in power, but they are not powerless.
Interesting. So what does she mean by that?
So what they've really been trying to do is to highlight the impact on real people. People who might be seeing cuts for things they depend on, or the real workers being laid off. Democrats brought people in both those situations to Trump's joint address to Congress and, have really been trying to get laid off federal workers to get in touch with them and tell their stories. And they've been holding lots of town halls, in-person town halls, to try to emphasize the people who are unhappy with what's happening.
I mean, one issue here, Democratic voters aren't willing to wait or don't want to wait. And I've talked to people who really feel panicked about what's happening nationally. They want to see more dramatic action to oppose it, since Democratic leaders in Congress aren't taking those critical actions. Some people are even demanding new leaders.
Yeah, I'd say they also feel like this is a very critical time. Trump is reshaping the presidency. He's making changes that I think a lot of people are worried about, taking more power at the expense of Congress and even challenging the judiciary. I think this has been the main complaint, for example, against Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, who seems to be operating on an old version of the Senate and the Republican Party. This idea that if Trump's policies are bad enough, Republicans will finally break with Trump. But, I haven't seen that happening. I don't think many people have, and a lot of Democrats haven't seen that happening. And I think that's what's frustrating them. Republicans didn't break with Trump after the January 6th attack. And I don't see anything he's doing now also triggering the type of break that Schumer thinks will happen.
Kind of, people thinking, do we need different type of leaders to deal with this changed landscape and a transformed Republican Party?
This makes me think of one moment at Pedersen's town hall when a guy asked if she could support changing Democratic leadership in Congress. And, he got cheers from the crowd with that question. And her answer didn't seem to satisfy the crowd.
How is that showing leadership when he says Democrats have no power?
I think it's even broader than what's happening in Congress. I was talking to some Democratic voters about the first few weeks of the Trump administration, and they were saying, look, where are our leaders? Who's going to meet the moment? Is there someone somewhere who can even give us a movement to join? And I see kind of a disconnect between the most frightened voters and some of the Democrats in office, elected officials who have to work or are working within the system as it exists. Voters, on the other hand, a lot of them feel like Trump has fundamentally changed the rules and in the process of changing the rules, and their representatives aren't keeping up. And where is there a coherent opposition? And what even will the country's institutions look like in a few more years or months?
Two Colorado members are actually having that kind of discussion right now. Senator Michael Bennet, who, as of the taping of this show on Tuesday, is mulling a run for governor, but hasn't announced his decision, and Representative Jason Crow, who has been tasked with helping recruit Democratic candidates for the midterm. Bennet has dinged leaders in the Senate for not having a plan or a strategy. And where the party goes from here is something he's spoken about a lot to the media, as well as at his town halls.
The Democratic Party, I think, has been very unresponsive to the concerns and worries of working people in the United States. We might have the rhetoric, but we haven't really delivered very much.
So what's Bennett's vision here? What does he think the answer is?
I think it's what he's talked about in that, you heard that in that clip, about delivering for working class families. It's a lot of economic policies, stuff he's talked about for years, strengthening the middle class, helping working families, the child tax credit. These aren't new policies for Democrats, but I think he's talking about how the party needs to message it.
Is Bennett talking about Democrats need to do more to push policies that currently have backing but haven't gone far enough? Or does he just think the party needs to talk about what they've already done in a better way that can connect with more people?
I think it's both, right? They need to show what the party has done to help middle-class families, and then they also need to promote policies that help middle-class and working families. Like the child tax credit, again, is the perfect example, something that he was able to get done during the pandemic, but it expired, and he hasn't been able to renew this expanded tax credit in the now Republican-controlled Congress. So, it's a challenge. And one of the things that Bennett has also talked about is just making things more understandable. An example he used was extending the tax credits for Obamacare. When you say that, it's not exactly a message that resonates with the average voter, but something simpler like universal health care is an idea that resonates.
So maybe kind of less wonkish and in the weeds. You had mentioned Congressman Jason Crow. He's from Aurora. He's been talking about this a lot as well. What's his prescription?
He's been talking similarly as Bennett. He wants Democrats who can directly relate to working families' problems. He wants to find candidates who can talk to everyday Americans' problems, not offer white papers or get caught up in all these cultural issues. I would say I think there are some exceptions, for example, like abortion. But I think the clearest example that I've seen recently is now you're hearing Democrats talk about egg prices and not Republicans, whereas before the election, it was reversed.
There was an article recently in the New York Times, this big spread on Jason Crow, and he seemed to describe his party in some ways pretending to be on the side of the working class or kind of posing as working class. And he seemed to be alluding to this fundamental question: why does Trump, a billionaire from New York City, resonate far more with blue-collar voters than Democrats who've claimed to be on their side for years?
I think this is one of the challenges that Democrats need to try to grapple with. Democrats have been losing in rural areas and with less educated voters in recent elections. This is a shift they have to deal with and find a solution to.
Democrats in Colorado did have a big moment recently in the state. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez held 2 rallies in Colorado that attracted huge crowds.
Thank you, Greeley!
What do you think it says that 2 politicians with progressive views got a lot of people to turn out here?
I think one thing it shows is the discontent people have with Elon Musk. This was billed as a rally against the oligarchy, and they railed against Musk, the richest guy in the world, making cuts to services a lot of people depend on, from Social Security to the VA.
And now that Trump is back in power, we see it clear as day. He's handed the keys to Elon Musk. For parts to the wealthiest people in the world for a kickback.
What about some of the policies Sanders and AOC have endorsed? It seems like this was also an attempt to try and harness the populist movement on the left.
Yeah, I think to a point, I think they were trying to show how the American dream has become harder for families to achieve, not because of regulations or unelected bureaucrats, but the ways in which the government helps the wealthy. Our Colorado Public Radio colleagues who reported from that rally talked to voters who were concerned about the working class people who feel like Democrats aren't speaking for them enough or not interested in the centrist message, but want to see more action from Democrats in challenging Trump. And I think AOC and Sanders are part of that group in the Democratic Party who do think Congress should be trying to do more to flex their Article 1 powers. I just don't know that they'll be successful.
So what do you think's next for Democrats?
That's the big question. What can they do to leverage the Republicans' slim majority in the House and the necessity of 60 votes in the Senate for most legislation? Can they flex any muscle legislatively? And does it even matter with a White House that's willing to bypass Congress? I'm not so sure. This may be an old-style politics answer, but it seems like what's next for Democrats is to really focus on 2026 and winning back the House.
That type of answer isn't going to be satisfying for some of the Democratic voters we've heard from who want action now and not waiting for a maybe in 2026. That's it for this episode. Purplish is a production of member-supported Colorado Public Radio and the Colorado Capital News Alliance.
The CCNA is a collaboration between KUNC News, Colorado Public Radio, Rocky Mountain PBS, and the Colorado Sun, with support from news outlets throughout the state. Funding for the Alliance is provided in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I'm Caitlin Kim.
I'm Benta Birkeland.
And I'm Jesse Paul from the Colorado Sun. Our producer is Stephanie Wolf. This episode was edited by Megan Verlee and sound designed and engineered by Shane Rumsey. Our theme music is by Brad Turner.
Purplish will be back in your feeds next week. Subscribe now so you don't miss an episode.
This is Purplish from CPR News and the Colorado Capital News Alliance.